Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you, wherever you are. My name is Leong. I'm your host today, as well as the moderator. Today, we are going to talk about our sector analysis series, and this is, I think, is our eighth webinar in the entire series. But this is the first one for us, which is online, and due to the pandemic situation, we are having it virtual. Today, our topic is cashless payment industry. And we are very honored to, at a very short notice, invited two experts from Ukraine to actually come. One of them to join us as panelists, and the other one to be speaking, to be giving a speech introduction to discuss about the cashless industry in Ukraine. That will be our kickoff event. And following that, we will have Eunice from FCCA, who will be delivering one of our joint research, the one between FCCA and CFA Institute, pertaining to the cashless industry. And last but not least, this will be followed by a panel discussion where the audience would have the opportunity to actually ask questions and hear from the insight from industry experts. And without further ado, let me welcome Mr. Karpenko. Sorry. Before that, today's webinar is scheduled for 60 minutes, including Q&A, and all participants are mute. However, we welcome comments and questions via the Q&A chat box on your screen. And this webinar will be recorded and be made available to view soon after the presentation concludes today. The main presentation will be uploaded onto ARX, Asia Pacific Research Exchange, www.arx.cfa. And even though we are from Asia, today we have the honor to make this a global webinar because we have our Ukraine friend joining us. And without further ado, let me welcome Mr. Karpenko for his opening remarks. Mr. Karpenko, over to you.
Hello, dear colleagues. I'm very glad to receive the opportunity to make a presentation on the development of financial technology industry in Ukraine. First of all, a few short words about the economic parameters of our country with an emphasis on financial sector and FinTech sector. Ukraine is one of the largest countries in Europe with a population of about 42 million people. And according to the results of last year, GDP growth amounted up to 3%, and the inflation rate was near the 4%. The credit rating of Ukraine significantly strengthened, and according to the Fitch, went up to B as for result of last year. From 2014 till to 2017, Ukraine passed through the huge transformation of the banking sector. Then so-called zombie banks were withdrawn from the market. Such banks do not fulfill their functions and did not comply with international requirements and standards. And as a result, such transformation of the market led to a significant increase in its profitability, as you see on the slide. Okay. Over the past 5 years, Ukraine has seen a clear upward trend in cashless transactions. And in 2019, in total, the cashless transactions exceed cash transactions. Also, we have also the payment infrastructures is constantly evolving, providing more options for non-cash settlements. As for example, only last year, the number of POS terminals increased by almost 20%, and the 80% of payments terminals support contactless payment. Next. Okay. Some words about Ukraine IT and FinTech in features. For example, IT industry accounts nearly 4% of global Ukrainian GDP. As for today, Ukraine takes the 4th place in the world in terms of contactless payment, and nearly 36,000 of IT specialists graduate from universities annually. There are more than 100 fintech companies in the Ukrainian market. And the boom in the development of FinTech in Ukraine falls on the 2016-2019. Almost the 60% of companies were founded in the last 3 years. In total, FinTech companies employ more than 4,000 people, and near the 14% of the companies have more than 75 employees in each. In 2020, the National Bank of Ukraine and other regulators of Ukrainian financial market adopted a financial sector strategy till to 2025. This is a key document which on the national level will determine the development of the market for the next 5 years. The strategy has 5 strategic directions, one of which is the innovative development. Those directions that become the basis for the development of an industry strategy, development strategy for FinTech 2025. We have made deep research of top 30 FinTech ecosystems and Big 4 studies on the latest FinTech trends and elements of sustainable FinTech ecosystem. Also, we involved the FinTech market players into the discussions on how they see the future of the FinTech market. Within a strategic workshop in March 2020, we developed the FinTech strategy, vision, mission, and strategic goals. You can see now them on this slide. The FinTech strategy 2025 is developing a number of changes to the current regulations, which will help to achieve the global of the strategy. First of all, they developed cashless economy. Second one is a high level of digital and financial literacy. And third one is sustainable FinTech ecosystem. The implementation of FinTech strategy 2025 envisaged the creation of the sustainable FinTech ecosystem in Ukraine based on the 4 key fundamentals: regulation and policies, demand, capital, and the talents. The designer of FinTech strategy 2025, they have developed a sustainable FinTech ecosystem model. It indicates, sorry, it's a little bit difficult to show you correct slide. Okay. It indicates that Ukrainian FinTech is globally integrated based on the 4 key fundamentals that from 2 spheres. The left of the one creates the condition for FinTech and innovation growth based on regulations and capital. And the right of the stimulates demand on the innovation and FinTech products and services, as well as talent pool development. The implementation of the FinTech strategy will largely depend on the scope of related projects. In particular, the implementation of the huge cashless economy program, which includes ISO standards, IBAN, Bank ID is the system for remote identification, the PSD2 Euro Directive, e-Grivna project, and etc., and the strategy of financial sector development in Ukraine till to 2025. We also depends on the implementation of the interconnected projects such as the remote identification models launch, financial literacy growth, consumers' right protection, establishing the MBU Cyber Defense Center, and few more. The key product elements of FinTech strategy is the regulatory sandbox, development and implementation of the full-fledged regulatory sandbox for rapid testing of innovative products and services. Second one is the mini-MBA program, which we call Digital Finance 4.0, the launch of an academic base with the focus of open banking is an element of FinTech strategy and will help build the sustainable FinTech ecosystem in Ukraine. The program is scheduled on September. The priorities of development of FinTech strategy 2025, at that moment, we have the Ukrainian FinTech market with following mostly developed fields, payment service and lending. This is the reason why we are aiming to develop the whole range of FinTech directions, what you can see on the picture. And my last slide is about the FinTech strategy indicators connected to the well-developed and sustainable FinTech market. First of them, increase the number of citizens holding a bank account and payment accounts at non-banking institutions from the 63% to 80%. Second one is increase the percentage of SMEs that accept cashless payment. We want to see the up to 70%. Next one is full-fledged regulatory sandbox launched to increase the number of products and services what have been tested in the well regulatory environment from the main application in 2019 till to 16 or 20 per each year after 2021. Next one, the FinTech market capacity grows from 5 till to 20 companies in each key field. I mean 20 companies in RegTech, 20 companies in InsurTech, and so on. Next one is integration to the global regulation environment. At least it will be a membership in a global financial, thanks for the slide, global financial innovation networking. And last one from the key indicators is the financial literacy in Ukraine should grow. Fin literacy index grows from 11.6 to 12.5 in accordance with OECD research. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Karpenko. That was a nice speech, and I hope all of you have a bit understanding about the Ukraine market. Next, let's welcome the next speaker, Eunice Chu from ACCA, who will be talking about our joint research pertaining to the cashless industry. Eunice, over to you.
I have to unmute myself. Hi, everyone. It is a new experience for me. I'm Eunice Chu from ACCA Hong Kong. New experience to greet all of you here online. I hope that you see me clearly and hear me well. All right. This time, I'm going to present to you a research report that ACCA collaborate with CFA and release this report. This is called Understanding Investment Fundamental of Online Payment Sector. Okay, you come. Now, first of all, let's look at the historical development of online payment. Okay, this snapshot shows that the first time online payment made through online started in 1995 with the establishment of Amazon. When we buy from Amazon, we pay online. And not long, then in 1999, PayPal comes in. And that time, people start to make payment through PayPal. But at that moment, I would say before 2000, the payment made through online is very limited. The number of payment made through online is very limited. The online payment become popular until 4G starts in 2000. And more people now with the stronger power of internet, people can go online, shop online, and pay through online. And online payment was further enhanced or developed more quickly in 2004 with the Alipay comes in. And in 2014, now we have Samsung Pay, Apple Pay. Now, what's next? 2020, now we are facing 5G. We are looking at 5G. So remember that we said that with the implementation of 4G, online payment gets much popular among the consumer. With the 5G kicks in, maybe the movement will be, the development of online payment will further. But the development among different countries are quite diverse, right? The pace, format, and depth of coverage vary quite widely among countries. So on the right hand of the spectrum, that the high user of online payment definitely China, over 80% of the payment made were through online. Whereas the lowest one adoption currently is Germany, all right, Japan, while the rest of the market, rest of the country actually is filling in between. Now there is no universal ranking of how how the degree or the level of online payment by country. Different surveys have slightly different, but roughly we can say that online payment is getting momentum in China, is doing quite quickly, while the rest of the country are catching up as well. Now, with the digital payment by consumer, the current up to 2019, the amount is 4.1 trillion. And it is expected by the time of 2020, the digital payment amount by consumer will up to 6.7 trillion. So over 5 years, it increased by 12.8% per annum. All right, 12.8% per annum. So about 50%, close to 50% over 5 years. So given it is a rosy picture ahead, so does it mean that as an investor, we can pick any type of online payment company without any screening? Well, the answer, of course, is no. So now we offer a framework. This report offers a framework that help you to evaluate which candidate or which company to invest. This framework consists of 4 main parts. All right. So I'm going to walk through you very quickly the framework that allows you to use in order to evaluate. Now, first of all, is the structural inference. Okay. So when you evaluate whether it is good to invest in a company, you can look at the structural inference of the company, the market that they're operating. For example, in that market, is this smartphone penetration is very high? If yes, then there may be more potential for the company to do business. What is the age population? So if the people are very high internet access, the people are handling younger generation, they may be more likely to accept online payment easier. All right. So we can also look at the level of cash flow activity and how many bank accounts they have. So the population with more bank account, more credit card, they're likely to use more online payment. The second area that we can look at is the market position. That market, how's the candidate, the company that you are planning to invest, what is this position in the market? Very easy is we can look at the barriers to entry. Now, if this is very difficult to enter into a market, yet the company already have a license to operate, maybe it actually protects it from the competitor, all right? And you also look at the consumer versus merchant market. So whether the company is focusing on customer or focusing on market. As just now, the speaker explained that in Ukraine, most of the FinTech company are now focusing on SME or large company rather than consumer or customer. And we can also look at how it is customer retention program, any existing program that help them to retain the customer, or whether it is easy to adopt the use of the program as well. So this is also give another perspective for you to evaluate whether the company will be doing well in that market. Apart from looking at the market, we can also look at the demand driver, all right? The type of payment method, or whether the retail or e-commerce market is very big. Now, if the retail market and e-commerce market is very big, while the candidate is providing e-payment for retail, then it may be a very, the market potential and the demand for your service will be higher. And actually, apart from retail, actually, we can also look at other type of payment. For example, bill payment of the utilities. This is also another area that the company can explore how they can facilitate online payment. And the revenue of the company will also depending on the size of the payment and whether it is doing transfer process as well. So if the transaction, each type of transaction amount is bigger, that means the fee that earned by that service provider will be higher as well. So these are the factors that we can use to evaluate what will be the revenue of the company. Lastly, of course, we have to look at the candidate itself, the company itself, how's the performance itself. So apart from the traditional evaluation like revenue, EBITDA, net margin, all right, we can also look at whether other non-traditional factors. For example, how much they are going to invest in the infrastructure, what is the growth in transaction in value and volume, So if there's a high growth potential, then the prospect of the company will be better as well. And whether the company will better use of the data analytics to help the business growth, and whether there's any security issue, all right, cyber security. As most markets, they are very concerned that if they use online, will their privacy or be violated, all right? And also whether there will be fraud prevention. We always heard that people, after using online, there may be some fraud problem, all right? Their data may be stolen by people. So I think that a candidate, if they are better prepared to defend the cybersecurity and fraud prevention, that will be better as well. All right. So this offers a number of items that we can evaluate the company. Okay. Overall, this report is very simple, yet it offers a very, very good structure, a framework for you to evaluate the company that you plan to invest. And I wish that you find the report useful. You can download the report from CFA website or ACCA website. So that's my sharing today. Thank you.
Thanks, Eunice.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Alan Look. I'm your moderator for today, and I happen to be the co-author with Eunice in the previous research that she has presented. And it took us quite a few years to actually come up with all this, but today that's not the main focus. Our main focus today is our panel discussion, which will begin soon. And before I actually kickstart the entire panel discussion, can I have the panelists to each of them briefly describe their background? Maybe let's start with Danny first. Danny?
Yeah, hi. Good evening, morning, afternoon to everyone. This is Danny Leong from GHL Systems Berhad. Basically, I'm the group CEO for GHL Systems Berhad, and we are basically a payment company focusing in the ASEAN space. So we do everything from credit card payments to debit card payments to e-wallet payments to cross-border e-wallet payments like Alipay and WeChat as well.
Hi, may I move on to the next panelist?
Hello, everybody. My name is Rostyslav Dyuk, and I'm chairman of Ukrainian FinTech Association. We build the FinTech ecosystem inside the Ukraine. We cooperate with the National Bank of Ukraine, and you can also download the FinTech report from our website to understand how Ukrainian ecosystem looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we kickstart this panel discussion, can I have all of you to answer polling questions, because that will determine the flow of our discussion. So the question is, for the medium of payment, what is your current dominant usage channel? Number one, is it through ATM, credit, electronic payment? Number two, credit and debit card. Number three, mobile phone payment. Number four, online payment, excluding mobile phone payment. And last but not least, physical cash and coin. I'm seeing the vote coming in. Wow, it seems like most of our folks here are using our credit and debit card goer. Wow, it seems that more than half of you actually rely on credit card and debit card. The second largest is actually mobile phone payment. And a handful of you actually use ATM cards. And physical cash and coin is actually not that many as well. Wow, this is quite amazing, because all of you actually came from different countries and not just in Hong Kong or Ukraine. Okay, great. Now, let me kickstart. Maybe I would have Danny to explain to us, how does the cashless payment industry actually works, and who are the key actors across the entire value chain?
Thanks, Alan. Okay, basically, this one I can go on forever, but in a very quick mode. Basically, in the payment space, there are primarily two main players, right? One is the issuer, which the person issues out the actual cashless payment, like a bank that issues out a credit card, or an e-wallet operator that issues out an e-wallet like Alipay, WeChat, etc. That's one party to it. The other one is what we call the payment acquirer. Basically, the player that actually enables a merchant to accept all these cashless payments. Right? Broadly speaking, there are these two players. Payment acquirers is where GHL plays a role in. Will enable any type of cashless payment, whether it's credit card, debit card, or e-wallets, for a merchant, and to ensure that they collect back all the payments for the merchant and settle payback, so to be remit to the merchant in a pre-agreed time to the merchant. So in a very simplest form, these are the two main players in the whole payment industry.
Mr. Rostyslav, is it very much the same over in Ukraine?
So, hello everybody. Ukraine have unique situation. We have unique financial sector. Our financial sector was like totally the same like banking sector. As could you see at the presentation of presentator from National Bank of Ukraine, the decrease of banking sector give like huge gap to the market, and half of population was unbanked. So the question of financial inclusion was on the table, and this like from one side. From another side, we have very good as this region penetration to the internet. On average, 63% of population have access to internet. Half of population use internet daily, and this half of population, we do the research, have credit card or debit card, and they use like 80% of their spending like once a month or even more often the cards. And if you look to the statistic of the National Bank of Ukraine that Serhii presented a couple minutes ago, you will see that now half of these operations that go through the cards are cashless. So we start go to cashless environment.
Thanks, Mr. Rostyslav. I think you have also answered to my second question, which now I'm going to ask, because when Eunice and I did the research, we actually interviewed quite a few actors and players in the industry. And one of the biggest, most common question that we ever ask is, what is the kind of adoption rate and what's the kind of annual monetary transaction value? So Danny, maybe you can give us a quick sense of how are these numbers differing across ASEAN, since you are the guru there?
Just give you some perspective before that, right? So that you know where we're coming from. Basically, if you look at a World report says that by 2025, ASEAN would have about 1.4 trillion USD worth of retail transactions, whether it's online and offline, right? So that's big. And cashless movement is moving very fast in this part of the world, because the unbanked segment is huge. About 53% is unbanked, maybe people without a bank account. About 68% of them are actually not with a debit card, right? And guess what? Like what Eunice mentioned, Leong, smartphone penetration is high with 72%, and internet penetration is at 61%. So basically, and population, which I forgot to mention, is at 650 million. So if you look at this is what we classify as basically a cashless payment melting pot, ASEAN region, right? To answer Alan's question, the different countries grow differently in terms of cashless. Naturally, the likes of Singapore will be probably ahead. I would say the Thailand, Malaysia probably slightly behind. All right, but they are, but still there's a big chunk of them that are not banked or doesn't have credit card. But the likes of Indochina, the likes of Indonesia, the likes of Philippines, those are really, really very big markets for to convert cash to cashless payments. Right, because the demographics are there, and the other thing I forgot to mention is actually the working class is growing with 25% adults with the age of 15 to 29, and the most important thing that we actually see in ASEAN is actually the regulators. You clearly see all the main regulators are really, really having a framework to push cashless payments. Right, they may start 6 months, 1 year behind of each other, but all of them today would pretty much have a very comprehensive framework to push cashless payment in the next few years. So that actually helps players like us, as well as the issuers, to actually really embark on this journey and to convert the big cash market to a cashless market.
Thanks, Danny. I actually quite like your keywords, the melting pot of cashless industry. So you also mentioned things like the regulators are doing their best to actually spearhead this industry. So maybe let's talk about a bit about regulation. What are the biggest challenges the regulator are actually facing? Maybe we start with our friend from Ukraine first.
If we speak about the regulation, we need to understand the global trend that the standards go globally and all local governments try to feed the best practice that they can find around the globe. And here we will see number one rule that all, if we speak about the payment industry, all payment like standards try to be based on some like international standards like ISO. So the most challenging now, I think it's ISO 222 that also Ukrainian National Bank tried to adopt. In other cases is we have challenge of like globally challenge of cybersecurity that hitting the payment industry, and we can see the most stronger regulation around the client identification, anti-money laundering, all this stuff. It's come with hardest standard like CFA, etc., and PCI DSS, and it means that this is like first challenge. Second challenge in regulation in Ukraine, we have EU in our borders, and we need to implement our legislation to EU regulatives, and now we're in a process moving to second payment directive of European Union. We have some like discussion at the market, and we hope to have this like legislation in the end of the year. This is like first one. Second one in regulation that hit also the payment industry. This is we see around the globe different new anti-money laundering laws that come to the market, and Ukraine it's like just start yesterday, so half of payment industry a little bit stressed because it's hit some rules of e-money identification. So we are still lucky as from one side, yes, from one side as pillars. We are still lucky because we don't have the strong data protection in the country, but it sometimes plays some bad things with consumers. So GDPR is still near our borders, but not implemented in Ukraine. And what else? We now do a big step in consumer protection. So consumer protection law is adopted and it's in the phase of implementation in Ukraine. So it's something like landscape of regulation in Ukraine, but I think in some cases is the same around the globe. Thank you.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm starting to hear cross-border jurisdiction. How do you regulate this? Data privacy, GDPR. So I think these are very important keywords all of us have to bear in mind when we are actually looking to invest in this industry, particularly because when I talk about cashless transaction is occurring on a global basis. So Danny, you are thriving in ASEAN, which by itself is not like European Union, one government, but more like different countries. So how do you actually rectify all these cross-border issues, particularly when you have to deal with different sets of regulators in your business?
Not like you can rightly point out, it's not easy, and we're not like in Europe. But the good thing is that the regulators among the region, pretty much, I believe they talk to each other. So they kind of have a fairly similar framework, but probably like, as I said, 6 or 12 months behind each other or something like that, right? But what I would say that usually the regulators would struggle with is actually the industry is moving faster than them, right? So it's not today they don't want to follow up with the industry, but it's in industry. Imagine every country has 10 players minimum pushing the regulators move faster, right? So they do struggle with that. But the good thing is then they will introduce a lot of forums to take in suggestions and stuff like that. So we actually get into these kind of discussions with the regulators in our respective operating countries. And we have a direct channel to them, and they actually call us for advice actually quite often, so that they say, okay, Danny, let's say Indonesian central bank will ask that, Danny, what is Malaysia doing? Can I, so that's a faster access for them to get information to execute, etc. Right? So then we do have this common problem, like what Alan said, and basically like Data Protection Act. Right? We have KYC Act problems as well. KYC is know your customer. As the industry move fast to try to get in more merchants or more cashless users, e-wallet, how to authenticate that person fast. Only way to do it is going to be electronically. So you got new regulations or new laws that need to come into place for know your customer, know your business, and then the digital part of it. So some of it is the challenges from the regulator. It's not just because of operation decide what to do. Some of it actually involves law. They actually pass laws to facilitate certain things. So these are some of the challenges that they have, which actually then kind of compound to us. But having said that, what I really like in ASEAN is, even though we are not like Europe, we are the central government do tend to talk to each other, to do learn from each other, and do tap on players like us for advice. So we actually work in conjunction together.
I'm actually very happy to see that, to hear from you that the regulators are talking to you on the ground instead of drawing up a blueprint behind some very dark corner in a boardroom, and before you know it, they come up with policy that is not on the ground. Okay, great. I actually have some question coming in that's directed particularly at Danny. You first. This question is this. Hi, Danny. Thank you for your time today. Hope you can shed some light on the following. Do you see a regional consolidation, cross-border M&A activity to create a dominant player in Asia in the next 5 years? And would the market share consolidation or competition be more localized in individual countries? From an investor point of view, this is question one. Question two, from an investor standpoint, companies with the payment space often carry very high valuation. What would be the key steps to monetize existing network in terms of bringing in higher earning to justify valuation? And in GHL case, could you comment on the company's strategy and timeline for network monetization? And obviously, before you answer this question, I must actually preempt the audience. Anything that is sensitive for our panelists today will not be answered, because after all, GHL is a listed company, so they cannot provide material non-public information. Danny, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Alan. Okay, first question, consolidation. There's two parts of the payment landscape, as I mentioned earlier. On the issuing side, basically the people, e-wallet operators, and the acquiring side. First of all, let's talk about the issuing side. Issuing side, I think consolidation would happen locally first. Meaning, let's say you got 10 e-wallets in one country, or 10 issuers in one country, they'll consolidate locally first to be 2 or 3 M&A, through M&A, right? Then if you follow the some of the plans that let's say the likes of Ant Financials are doing, right? Ant Financial from Alibaba, they actually have a lot of invested companies in ASEAN which are all doing e-wallets, right? That is some form of pre-consolidation, if you ask me, on the issuing side. So whether they'll really bring everybody under the Ant Financial group later on is yet to be seen, but it won't surprise me, right? So issuing side net, I think consolidation will happen on the local level first before it goes regional, bringing all the countries together, or a few countries together. From the acquiring side, where GHL plays, possibly, right? Possibly, but this is sometimes I would say it's possible. Why? Because for players like us, we will go into a new country probably just to acquisition faster, because we can't wait for it, right? So we'll probably be initiated by players like us to either acquire companies similar to us in countries that we're not in, or work with somebody else, right, in the future, which I can't comment. So that's the first part. The second one, valuation. Yes, payment companies, same like startup companies, all have very high PEs. My view to this is basically our play is actually a what we call a footprint and a transactional volume play, right? Typically, when footprint meaning the acquired merchant tend to stay with us for a while, a long time, right? So basically, we are gathering momentum as we add, let's say, 10,000, 20,000, whatever new merchants every year. It adds on to the pile. Hence, there's a long runway for our merchant growth, rather than it's not one-off deals, right? Same with transaction flow. Transaction flow is the same thing. As merchants are transacting at 10,000 a month, right? It can only grow if the economy allows it to grow. And compounding it with the shift from cash to cashless, the transaction growth will continue to be very, very strong growth. So our business is very much based on growth, right? Future growth. hence, I guess that's why it's recognized as a high, so-called high PE counters, because we will bring in the eventual recurring sustainable profit, right? On top of that, if you can look at what we do is like some of the other startups do. Our key is actually we are the last mile to the small merchants, right? We control the small, not control, we have the relationship to the small merchant. So today, I'm doing payment, but I have the relationship to do anything else that I choose to, especially if it's a digital financial based product. Right? For example, a bit like JHR, what we're doing now is we're doing some lending, micro lending to my small merchant. I'm doing micro insurance to my small merchant, which is announced. So these are to me, the justification of our valuation.
Thanks, Danny. Now we have two questions which will be directed to both of you. The question are very obvious. What effect is the COVID-19 pandemic have on the future of cashless transaction? And the second is, what if any headwinds do you think could potentially slow down the growth rate of cashless transaction in the future for your jurisdiction? Maybe we start off with Mr. Rostyslav first.
Okay, let's start from the COVID. It's the hottest topic. I think it's the hottest trend around the globe. Like with this or not. So it have two sides, you know. So we hear around the bad side of COVID, but it's also have like positive side. So let's start from bad side of COVID and then move to the positive one. So the bad side is that it's hit and kill some industries, for example, traveling, all this like hotel industry, restaurant industry. So we have strong quarantine in Ukraine. So all this like small shops, restaurant, even some like public transport are closed. So people can, use to pay, etc., etc. All this money, so payment provider who serves this sub-industries don't have any money in this. So this is like bad things. Another bad thing that people try to save more, not spend for some stuff, for example, some entertainment industry, all this stuff like decrease dramatically the spending. So this is also like have a bad side of payment industry according to COVID. But so now let's move to positive one. So as the chairman of FinTech Association, so what I see, so banks thinks how they can transform quickly. So they don't think, let we do it in next year or next decade. So they are just thinking each day and come to us and say, can you recommend some like FinTech solution for this or this business process? And this is good because it's give more market for FinTech companies. So this is first one. Second one, it's stimulate more contactless payments. So for Ukraine, it's like important, as I mentioned before, we are pretty young payment industry in Europe. So we don't have this like evolution, but we have the revolution. We do the leapfrog. 80+% of post terminal, it's like contactless. We have fourth place in the world last year of terms of contactless payment. And so what we see from the COVID, all this Visa, MasterCard, like increase the limits of contactless payment, and Ukraine is like the same side. So another thing that we see is that some consumers go to like digital space. So e-com is still booming in decreasing the classical retail because people don't like to go outside the home and they try to buy something in internet. And all these payments around the delivery service like Uber or Glovo is also booming in our country, especially. I think this is like what we can see at the moment from the COVID. We don't know when it's finished. Then we can make, like summary how it's hit the industry or no. But at the moment, I see some like also positive trends for FinTech and this transformation process. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I mean, because of the pandemic, people are spending less, and that's why government throughout the world are throwing out money in what they call quantitative easing. And strangely speaking, the more money they throw, it doesn't seem to have an impact on inflation. But that's another story for another day. Danny, is the same situation happening over at your site?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Alan. I won't repeat what my fellow panelists have said. Basically, we have the same pros and cons, right? Basically, we all probably have got this joke that what helped your organization or help your industry to jump into digitization, and the answer is actually COVID-19, right? I mean, I'm sure you all went through that joke before, and it's real. I mean, whether we like it or not, it's real. Really pushing people to go digital. In our world, go cashless, right? To go into cashless payment in two forms, right? One is actually we'll see more offline merchants moving to online quickly, right? We'll continue to see that, probably more delivery or more delivery of goods or for food or for products. The other part we actually see, like what my fellow panelists said, that contactless payment, right? But we do see a spike in card contactless payment increase since COVID-19, right? And that is actually, I think, published by Visa and MasterCard as well. The other thing that we see increasing is also what we also deem as contactless payment is actually your mobile e-wallet payments. So when you use your phone to pay, to scan a QR code or get scanned from a scanner, it's actually technically a contactless transaction, which actually people are moving towards it because they prefer, because it's contactless, right? So what we are experiencing here is contactless is not just the wave card that we know, but it's actually the mobile cashless payment as well, right? So in terms of headwind, naturally, payment side is actually a factor of the economy, retail economy, right? So any headwind will be pretty much how the overall country, region, or global economy, retail economy evolves, right? On our perspective, we're not too concerned with it because you have to believe that things will come back. Question is when, right? So for us, we continue doing what we are doing, right? And get ready for the good times.
Thanks, Danny. There's a very, as you were speaking, there was a very specific question directed to you. It says, thank you for the clear explanation, Danny. You mentioned that payment players could offer additional services such as micro-lending and insurance to your existing network. Do you envision that this additional service would eventually overtake earning contribution from your core business in the long run?
Oh, okay. That's a sensitive question to answer. All I can say is our cheekily answer, I hope so.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Rostyslav, in your part of the world, is the same thing happening as in while the industry is trying to provide the core services, there are more and more cross-selling opportunity available?
Opportunity in what? Can you please repeat?
Opportunity to do cross-selling, because even though the question just now was directed to...
Okay, good question. So my strong belief that, if you can do something that you will do better than anyone, you will win the race. But the world is now changing and people don't want to, shifting before in thousands of apps. So it start to aggregate some services and some products in some like super apps or like mobile banking booming. And they start to understand that have new client, it's always more expensive that, sell something for existing one. So cross-selling, like it's a very hot topic in our part of the world, especially of booming of like neobanks. They, have the loyal clients who live digitally, who use services digitally. So for them, it's very easy to sell or upsell or cross-sell some services in digital channels.
Thanks, Mr. Rostyslav. Actually, the more I am into this discussion, the more I realize that how similar ASEAN and Ukraine is when it comes to the cashless payment industry. So perhaps both of you can actually go offline to discuss how you can actually enter each other market on a private basis. But that's another story for another day. So one of our main topic theme today is actually to understand if an investor were keen to actually invest in your industry, what do you think are the super key attributes he or she should be looking at if there's only 3 hours? Maybe we start with Danny first.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Okay, basically, in our world, the payment world is basically we make money from when there is a cashless payment transaction, right? So basically, the most important thing to us that we look at is what we call TPV, total payment value, the actual total collectively value that goes through quote unquote our company, because then we actually get a what we call a merchant discount or a quote unquote commission, and that's where we make our money, right? So the main thing that we achieve, first main thing that we achieve is what we call TPV, total payment value, right? What creates TPV, right? What's the building block at the back of TPV? It's actually largely 2 things. How many payment schemes, what we call payment schemes here, basically whether it's Visa, MasterCard, local debit, Alipay, WeChat, local wallet, how many of these schemes do you have to support this transaction? Why? Because as a customer comes in, you don't know what they will have, what cashless payment they have. So if you have more, the merchant has more, so it's a better chance of the merchant collecting a cashless payment as opposed to cash, right? So the scheme, how many schemes one has contributes to the TPV. Then you will have how many merchant, how many acceptance point you have, right? Which basically 1 times 2, you will get your transaction volume. The more merchant base you have, the bigger the merchants are, you would have more transaction value, right? Math is very simple. And the last block of it is how many countries you have, right? A factor of how many countries. Countries, because why? One more country, you typically will have more transaction, more merchant, more payment types, and more transaction value, right? And it goes on that way. And the other thing, with more countries, it also helps you to mitigate any local country disruption in terms of, let's say, economy, etc. Then you get to balance things a bit more, rather than, let's say, if you only focus on one country and if something happens in the country, then very localized, then the company gets affected, right? So these are the main components to me to evaluate payment companies like us, right? So right at the top, TPV, supported by how many payment schemes you have, plus how many merchant base you have, acceptance points you have, and how many geographies you have.
Thanks, Danny. I'm actually hearing that scale and scope are both very important in your industry. Mr. Rostyslav, is it the same situation happening in your country? Because I know that even in ASEAN, there are not many listed companies in this industry. And I know that in Ukraine, there seems not to be any listed company yet, but there are quite a few VC private equity that are in the cashless payment industry. Is it really so?
So, I'll just say that Ukraine, from perspective of venture capital, it's like new El Dorado. And I think what people should, as investors, should do after the COVID, they should take all their money and go to Ukraine. And now I explain why. So Ukraine, as I mentioned, it was like poorly banking sector, and disruption of banking system give huge opportunities. So Ukraine is pretty big country, 40 million peoples, and banks step back. So it's a huge space for FinTech company, and FinTech business are booming in Ukraine. So we at the moment, each year we do the FinTech catalog and ecosystem overview map. So you can, see the ecosystem map behind me, but, you can go to our site and download our report. So what you will find in this report, that we have more than 100 companies in different space of FinTech, around 30% work in payments, but not only payments. So I'll just also share a couple numbers with you. So it's pretty young industry. 60% of this industry is not older than 3 years. But the main numbers is that evaluation of the industry 3 years ago was less than $30 million. So it's nothing. Yes, it's peanuts. But we do the estimation of the industry at the end of 2018, and it was more like $650 million. So it means that 20 times per 2 years is pretty good ratio, I think. So it's the first one. The second one, that 57% of all Ukrainian FinTech company work not only in Ukraine, so they export the products and services around the globe. So mostly it's this region. Some of them expand Europe and some United States. So we have very good level of programmers and mathematics in Ukraine, so it can build high quality products, and the money prove it. Yes, so if you can sell not only in this country but another, it means that your products is worth something. So this is like second mention. And third one, so our regulation was pretty Ukrainian, and now we in process of integration our legislation to European standards. So second payment directive, all these like global standards come to Ukraine. It means that if you come to Ukraine and buy Ukrainian products or as investor or company or startup, it means that if they will fit Ukrainian standards, then you can go globally. So a couple of years ago it was different story. You should do something additional to fit it, like GDPR or PSD2 or whatever. So I think in 1 year you don't need to do this, because if company work in Ukraine, it's the same rules that you have in Singapore, Malaysia, whatever. So I think we have pretty huge potential to invest to Ukrainian companies. So this is like third one. And the first one, and I think the last that I want to mention, that we don't have any VC capital at the beginning of building the industry. So it means that people use investment, we call it 3F, friends, family, other fools. Yes, this type of investment, and more than 80% of them go through the break even, so they're profitable. And it's something different that you can find in Silicon Valley, because they're not profitable. They take a huge amount of VC investment and they burn it. So in Ukrainian FinTech and payments providers are all profitable and mostly founded by founders. So it's different type of behavioral when you do something with your money but not investor one. So I think we have huge potential, and I hope after the COVID it's finished quickly. We'll see a lot of interesting deals. Yes, and you're absolutely right. They are mostly private. We have a very poor stock market, so I can even say that it's not exist in terms of like USA market, for example. But I hope it's also we'll see huge changes in nearest future, because new draft of legislation come to the market. Thank you.
I completely like the way you actually described that this is a new opportunity, because there's a lot of private equity and family-owned sort of initial setup. And so any one of you who is actually interested to go for early stage investment, perhaps Ukraine will be the good place for you. But if you are more towards the public equity, perhaps ASEAN and GHL might be one of your options. And while Mr. Rostyslav is actually talking, I actually opened the poll tool, which is asking you, have you invested in any company, both private and listed, that thrive within the cashless payment ecosystem? And we're actually quite surprised to see that only 25 of you actually invested, and 69 of you have not invested, and 23 of you are contemplating investing. So there's a lot of potential. So Danny, I think there's a lot of interest here in your industry to invest in your industry, and so you might want to do more roadshow in the near future. Okay, for now, let's move on to another question that we have from the audience, which by the look at it, it seems to be a question from one of our audience from Australia. What is your view of payment aggregators? Also, what is your view of buy now, pay later provider in the payment space? Danny or Mr. Rostyslav, which of you, who of you would like to answer this question?
I can take it first. Okay, basically, we are effectively a payment aggregator, meaning aggregating acceptance of multiple payment schemes, right? Buy now, pay later is very, very popular in Australia. I think 3 or 4 listed companies are doing that in Australia. That is the new age fintech way of doing it, right? In ASEAN, typically, buy now, pay later effectively means installment payment, right? Which actually happens on the card payment for a long time already. So it's actually quite popular from a credit card standpoint, right? And now what we have seen is the e-wallet issuers, local e-wallet issuers, actually starting to allow buy now, pay later kind of scheme for even smaller transaction. I mean, some of them in Indonesia, I've seen that you can buy a meal with your girlfriend or whatever, and then you can buy now and pay later, right? So they have gone into that kind of level rather than traditionally we buy now, we buy a fridge or TV now and pay later over installment. But now with the new fintech guys pushing things through, you actually see the e-wallet guys actually doing it even for normal meals or even smaller items. So that is growing, but in a different form.
Mr. Rostyslav?
Yes, so if you back to Ukraine, so what we will find? So just, it's not, I think, only Ukrainian question. If we speak about payment aggregators, so as I mentioned, so the business model are changing in new world that we live and fit in now. So it changed from company-centric to customer-centric. And I believe that like direct transaction and direct services will work better in nearest future, but if you are a payment aggregator, you can use another strategy to survive and provide as a service. You'll have more data, more different big data, or some data of transaction data. And if you use this like opportunity to do some, and find some insights from your data using like whatever, AI, machine learning, all this like data science secrets and techniques, you can win this race. If not, so aggregators will die in nearest future, because sometimes providers can do this very directly, not so expensive services that consumer will buy directly. So this is like first case. In Ukraine, still aggregator are booming, but I think it's question of 3 years. So another question, what's about buy now and pay later? So it depends what we mean under this like product. If we see like classical credit card, yes, it's just dramatically booming in Ukraine, especially new types of neobanks that arise from fintech companies. Ukrainian monobank is new type of this digital bank. It's from scratch, have 2 million consumer who use credit cards, and it's like #1 of growing neobank in Europe last year. So this is like first question. Another question, if we speak about some different type of than credit card, credit products, it depends from cost of money. We have very huge rates of cost of money. So these types of products that we can observe in Europe or in Russia doesn't fly in Ukraine. So only credit cards and credit limits fly in this sense of buy now, pay later. Thank you.
Thank you both. Let me summarize, because I think we're running short of time. Today has been a very fruitful discussion. I have been hearing that scope, scale are very important, and so is being customer-centric. And I have also heard from the two panelists that this industry is at its infancy, particularly more so in Ukraine, where you don't even have listed company in this industry, which means that there's a chance for a unicorn to actually emerge. And consolidation in this industry is a very likely possibility, and that consolidation might have been a regional basis and not just country specific. And throughout my research together with Eunice in 21 different industry, and this cashless payment being just one of them, what we have noticed is that Europe and in particularly European Union tend to be the rule maker in many things. Like for example, nowadays in the palm oil industry, as long as a manufacturer can fulfill the stringent requirement of European demand for palm oil import, they can actually export their product to everywhere in the world. So the world is actually looking at European Union as the rule maker, and this is something that we are discovering to be common among many industries. Well, we'll stop here, and let's all of us give a virtual round of applause to all our panelists. And upcoming, we have two other webinars. One will be the ESG disclosure in Asia, pertaining to key findings from Hong Kong listed company on 5th of May. And the other one is on the 12th of May, where we'll be doing a deep dive into the VIX and market volatility. And this is to be very excited, because all of us know that the market is in a very volatile state, and with a lot of people saying that it might actually collapse or it might actually climb to a new high. So you have a very divergent point of view, and this is what makes the content even more timely. So all of you who are keen to know more about this event, please go on to www.arx.cfa, where all the information will be there. And do stay tuned for more our upcoming webinar in other industry. That's all for today. Thank you, everyone.